thanks for joining me here on the Need to Know Comedy Show.
Welcome.
So look, obviously you have loads of strings to your bow. So I'll try and get through it all in half an hour. But so you're a trained musician, yeah?
Yeah. Music's one of the strings. Violin's the main instrument.
And oh, really? Yeah. So when did you start learning violin? From a young age? Yeah.
Yeah, that one was when I was about 4. But my best friend had a violin, and I just wanted to copy her, so I just begged my mum until I had one. She wouldn't let me for a while, but then I took to it and kept going.
Great. It's supposed to be the most difficult instrument to play.
It can definitely sound horrible. Yeah.
So you have to be young maybe to start out with it when you don't really mind sounding.
Yeah, maybe that's the trick. Yeah, because I have no recollection of whether it sounded absolutely awful. So that's my mum had to deal with that.
Right. Yeah.
And going until it sounded vaguely okay.
So as an adult, it's probably really difficult to sound horrible for a while. So, but then were you into drama or acting as a young child?
Yeah, I've got a lot of siblings, so we did a lot of like makeup games, and I'd like write the odd play and make my siblings perform in it for Christmas and stuff like that. So yeah, that kind of thing. And then drama at school, that was always fun, but never really took it seriously, but somehow ended up here anyway.
Yeah, but on the way you ended up doing history, right? In
yeah
Oxford. How you thought you were going to go that way?
Yeah, I basically just assumed that you should try and make some money, I think was the main idea. And I guess like getting all right grades at school meant that it just kept making sense to go and do the kind of uni academic route. But alongside that, I was always kind of fingers in like music and drama pies. So did like comedy bits and drama bits and like orchestra and things when I was there. And then it was afterwards when everyone was starting to get like grad scheme jobs and stuff. That's when I held off. I was like, wait a minute, maybe I can do something else.
Right, yeah. And so what did you do then? Is that when you went to Paris or?
Yeah, although actually, first of all, I took a year out after Oxford because, well, I needed to earn money for like 2 options. I applied for a combined English and history masters at King's. So I was kind of dabbling with continuing the academic side. And then Lecoq in Paris was the slightly side. But I thought, I'll apply, we'll see what happens. I'll earn money for either option. So did some like basic admin for the year, then actually did a bit of arts festival administration as well, which also proved to me that I didn't want to go into the like admin sides of the arts, didn't want to organize festivals. I kind of wanted to be a part of it. And then I got into Lecoq and was like, well, I better learn French properly then.
Oh, you could just mime.
Yeah, I mean, that is what I did for a long time because I did not speak it before I went.
Oh, really? Yeah. And how long is the course at the Lecoq school?
It is 2 years, although it's a pretty brutal culling process. It's not necessarily 2 years. You go for a first term, and then at Christmas you have a chat with the teachers to see if they think that you should continue, to see if you want to continue, and then at the end of the first year they cut the class in half. So you have 2 classes in the first year, and then in the second year there's just 1 class. So it's a pretty brutal day of people going up and down to the teacher's office and coming out with a tear or a slight smile.
Wow, that sounds brutal. Yeah, especially after a whole year. So, like, what are you learning there? Let's say when you start out in the first year, what would you be doing?
I mean, it's always very hard to explain because I spent my first term being a fried egg and a sausage and various forms of like imaginary mime journeys through imaginary weather. So it really is like it's building up a very physical language to show where you are in a space with having nothing there. And so that's where, yeah, you start with a lot of mask work. So it's not about you as a character or personality, it's you as a body inhabiting that space. And like, you know, if it's raining, we can see from you that it's raining, that kind of thing. And then you go into the more generally being weird different materials, so that's where like eggs and sausages come in. If you're like really angry, then you've got the language of like you're this sizzling egg that can start. So there were a lot of very interesting improvs and a lot of moments where you take a step back and you're like, wow, the teacher is literally just giving feedback on how much of a sizzling sausage I managed to be, but I've accepted it as normal. So it's hard to come back and describe to friends after that first term. But then you start going on to things like animals and elements. So again, creating characters in a way that are informed by certain animals. And I found it quite useful because, you know, if you do an impression of a golden retriever, you'll get a very specific type of person, and you can then use that principle to be like 100% golden retriever or like 50% that, and like have a character who's very kind of informed by that kind of element, or any of the fire, wind, water elements, that kind of thing as well. So really building up a lot of a physical language and a lot of mime technique as well. So got a few moves up my sleeve of how to climb a mime wall. I spent a few weeks doing that. And did quite a bit of acro as well, so handstands, headstands, flips and things, and some juggling as well. I'd have to practice that a bit more, but
so is it physically demanding?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone definitely was in quite good shape by the end of the 2 years. Yeah. And then you notice afterwards.
Right. And what about emotionally? Is it emotionally demanding?
Yes, I'd say that's the bigger journey. It can be quite brutal in a way, because every week you are improvising and kind of putting yourself up on stage in front of teachers who aren't really of the school of thought where encouragement is key. It's more like, we're not going to tell you the rules, but we're going to tell you no until you've understood them yourself.
Really?
So it kind of felt like that. And there was a lot of making up stuff in groups of people in a way that sometimes if you gelled with that group, it was great. But then if you didn't gel with that group, it could be quite a tricky process in itself, just that kind of figuring out what voices are offering what, you know, what lines of inquiry you're following. And then at the end of each Friday, you would show the piece that you've been creating that week. And the teachers, if they didn't like it, they'd just be like, okay, merci. And you'd just have to stop as soon as you heard that. It wasn't a given that you would get to the end of your piece. And it would be the worst if they said it quite quietly and half the group has heard and stopped, but half the group is keeping on going, like defending this piece. Brutal. And if you kept getting stopped week after week, that could cause pretty deflated moments. But we got through it stronger.
Yeah. And how do you feel you'd use it? Like, so would you if you were act in a character in a play or something, are you thinking of that using one of the elements or some of the elements, or a retriever, for example, as part of that character? Are you going, oh yeah, this character in maybe.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. A lot of it comes into, and I do directing as well now, where I've found it very useful to set up exercises where I'll get actors to like take their character and then put it on a scale of like fire, 0% fire, 100% fire. Is your character a fiery character? Are they a watery character? Are they windy, or like in a certain emotion? Do they like flare up like fire, or do they then kind of melt away like water? And then like, you know, does it respond to you if they are reptilian, a particular snake? And you kind of use those as a toolbox. And for me, like if an animal image of a particular animal particularly helps me for a character, then I'll go with that and might add in little elements of other things, but I won't necessarily try and have everything in there at once. It's kind of gets to the point where you're like pick and choose, which is quite nice.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you have all that to go to when you're coming up with a character. And so like you've done so I think you've worked on a couple of Shakespeare plays where you do the physical. Are you a physical director? Is it? I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, so there's movement direction, which is a bit separate to your straight play directing bit. Yeah, so I started off adding some movement direction into some of the Shakespeare I was doing, where it was because we were working in an outdoor Shakespeare context where we didn't have a lot of set or anything, so kind of had to use movement in a way that like made it look like we're in kind of vaguely different spaces on stage, stuff like that. And also various comedy bits, like in Midsummer Night's Dream, there's a whole comedy scene where the mechanicals are playing with each other and getting stuck in various like physically funny positions, that kind of thing. That's where I've got to like dabble.
Right, and so you can help the actors to find those positions, or do you help them devise them for themselves?
Yeah, I think like the latter. I'll try and create a situation in which I'm getting the actors to improv stuff in a way that I can then be like, yeah, let's keep this bit and push this bit a bit further, so that it's coming from them. Because if it's the kind of clowny side of physical comedy, I've kind of the more I do it, the more it's clear it doesn't ever work or translate in a funny way if you've got an exact idea in your head and you try and make someone do that exact idea. Like imposing that on them isn't the right way around. Like you need to kind of let them find their version of the kind of essence of what it is you wanted. Yeah.
Sounds great. I've only done a couple of live plays, but in one of them we spent a few days finding some physical. I just love all that because I'm doing stand up a lot, and it's just great to do something different. So let's get. So when did you start doing stand up? If that's would you consider what you do stand up?
I would. So I've done a bit of stand-up, but I'd say I still, the comedy side of things is still kind of physical comedy. I've got two solo shows, and they're not straight stand-up. They're definitely clowny side of things. One's a lot more talky than the other. But yeah, bit of stand-up as well, which it feels quite different to me, being in front of the mic and just saying the words.
Yeah, not using movement. But like, do you come up with a show? You're not doing the circuit. You're not doing the stand-up circuit, are you? Or are
you? Not yet. Quite the same circuit. I'd say a more like clowny cabaret circuit, which like gets into the odd stand-up bit of circuit. So I'd say, in general, I'm a kind of across all the worlds type person. So in terms of the stand-up circuit, that's one where I was kind of getting to the point of like, I'll start like delving into that scene more directly with this slot I have. But then COVID happened, so.
So you've been to Edinburgh with one show, is it? Yeah, one show.
One show, and then was meant to go to Assembly with the next show this year.
Okay. So the show you did was Intolerable Side Effects, right? And that's concerned with contraceptives.
Contraception and the side effects,
and the side effects of contraception. And you were a rabbit?
I was a rabbit, yes. Yeah, talk about the physical theatre animal background. Yeah, perfect example.
But it got amazing reviews, so.
Thanks. Yeah, it went down well. And I still want to do more with it. Might go to Prague Fringe if that ever happens. So I guess it's this big kind of clown show where I've taken the idea of contraception and the side effects, but put it into this rabbity world where instead of the pill, Diane, this rabbit, she takes celery, and basically then all the side effects themselves get really quite like physically big and comic, and she just tries to live her like rabbit millennial life. And so there's loads of like parallel human scenes, like she goes on rabbit Tinder, she gets ready for her rabbit date, that kind of thing, but it all just gets really silly because it's in this rabbit world. And so I also have to figure out then playing the other characters that come up, because it's obviously just me on stage. So
yeah. Sounds really good. So like when you were thinking about this show, was it subject matter that you wanted to tackle first?
Yeah, so actually I that's where my stand-up has come out of as well. It was like the word version of what I wanted to discuss about contraception and the side effects, which was an issue affecting me at that time. But this physical show came out of it as well. And that seemed to be a really effective avenue of exploring a subject matter that I felt wasn't talked about that much and isn't really necessarily immediate like comedy subject matter. And especially is probably seen as quite like female subject matter. So I was kind of like, well, the issue is it's not just a conversation for women. So how do I do something that opens up a conversation? Probably, I don't know, make it a bit funny and turn it into something that's not like a human discussion, putting like, which I feel probably is easier to get a bit, I don't know, potentially closer to the bone more quickly, whereas like I find transposing things into other worlds, you can just watch someone else grapple with stuff in a funny way, in a way that's not your own life, but in a way that you could then be like, oh yeah, this. Oh, actually, yeah, I enjoyed that, but also kind of see where this poor rabbit is actually suffering and how that might apply to humans.
Yeah, right. Well, it strikes me, and I haven't seen the show obviously, but that you can, because of what you've learned physically, perhaps, that you can tackle a subject and still get a good, without belittling the subject.
I think that's the aim. Yeah, and I think that's where I find comedy so effective, and like the physical comedy as well, when you can say stuff and express stuff without verbally giving any judgment on it. And with that kind of physical clowny stuff, you can really like amp it up and go a bit crazy and go a bit dramatic.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
Sorry.
I was going to say that's where some of the music comes in as well. It kind of turns into a bit of a parody with some of the music elements too at some points, with like really overly dramatic background side effects music and like a huge Les Mis finale style number, that type of thing.
Oh, really? Oh, it sounds amazing. And you composed all the music yourself, yeah?
Yeah, put it all together on GarageBand. But recently got Logic Pro, so I'm going to up my music game. Very exciting.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I've only got a little bit of experience. I did a 1 week course in clowning, and I learned a little bit. It was, when I asked you, was it emotionally hard? That 1 week was.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I did learn one thing. I think that an audience loves to watch someone struggle.
Yeah.
So even if you're struggling, it's horrible, but the audience are loving it.
Yeah. I think it's if you struggle and if you let them in on it, like if you let them feel for you and you just accept and you're there and you're like, I don't know what to do, I'm just gonna keep being here, you suddenly are like, oh, keep going, I'll watch and laugh, but keep going.
Yeah, but it's really difficult. It's been difficult for someone who's done stand up for years to let go of that barrier, you know, that
it's really difficult. And so often, like, there is that instinct of wanting to give them something good and perform something and be something. But like, I always find, like, when watching it and thinking about it, when you see someone doing that and like desperately clawing at something, you're like, no, stop that. That's the awkward bit. That's the uncomfortable bit. Let's just strip it back and like give yourself a moment to be vulnerable on stage, and then we'll be with you again. And then we can,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, if things aren't going well for you, just live with that.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done, exactly. Yeah. And so I've looked at something else that you do, and I don't even understand what it is. It's at the London Back Choir. You're an animateur.
Oh yeah, that's just some. They call it animateur. It's a French word. They use it, but I never know how to say it in English either. But that's what they call it. Basically, a workshop leader, a facilitator.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. That's just like part of the kind of music and teaching side. So, making choirs fun for young children.
All right, sure.
Yeah.
So you seem to do a good bit of work as well in that kind of way, with workshops and that kind of thing.
Yep. I mean, probably starting off as being an essential part of also living and funding an artistic career. Teaching has been a part of that. But I do really enjoy it, working with kids as well. And I think as well, there's always a lot of material that comes out of that.
Right.
Very funny things, children.
They say the funniest things.
Yeah.
I think that was a TV show. So, and you're recommended, by the way, by Erin Tess, and she's amazing. So,
yeah.
And I've seen you work together. You do not paid, but great exposure.
Unpaid but great exposure. Yeah. UBGA. Yeah. NUBGA wouldn't work so well. UBGA is.
Yeah. A line that every performer has heard many times.
Yeah. So it's born out of that. Yeah.
So tell us about that. What do you do on that?
So that was Erin's brainchild, wanting to put on this comedy series, but hosted in people's living rooms. So it's like an intimate gig set up where we bring it to each different venue. And she wanted to create this interview series as well, where we film comedians. And so then she came to me with that little nugget of an idea, and we kind of grew it into this thing where I became a weird kind of silent clown sidekick in the back of everything. It was never quite planned, but that's kind of where it went, with me aiding the host in all that. So it's been quite fun so far. We've done a few series of it with like filming interviews for lots of different comedians, and then hosting a live gig at the end of those in various living rooms around London for the moment. And so, yeah, we kind of have a different theme for each show, like have a few discussions, a few ideas, bashes, but then for like my bit of it, I also very much leave what's going to actually happen up to the moment that it happens, just so I don't know, in that kind of clowny way, you can roll with it in the background. And then our final one before all this, well, just at the start of all this COVID stuff, we had to move that one online, so we did our first ever online UBGA gig in everyone's own living rooms the first Saturday of lockdown, because it was meant to be in real life, so we're like, oh, we'll just see what happens. And it was, yeah, quite the experience going online. But that was the first time that I ended up hosting and like speaking and being the compere, which was quite an interesting switch from being the silent like clown in the background. But we will see what happens next with that.
Right, yeah. It's difficult not getting feedback from an audience.
Oh, I know. But we had a little. I also had my brother on hand to do the laugh track soundtrack. Like he was on audio sharing. But I think it was just quite confusing for everyone. But we did also have one comedian who was more of a character comedy guy who did a bit of a interactive workshop. So he picked one guy who then unmuted, and so there could be a bit of interaction back and forth, which I think worked more rather than the speaking into the void with our own clap track.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting
It's
time.
tough. Yeah, I do an improv show online, but like there's 4 or 5 of us, so we're kind of laughing at each other, so that's okay.
Yeah, no, it's good when you can share it with someone in the room. That's nice.
Yeah, that's fine. That's good. But I saw one of the UGBAs that was recorded, and I must say the editing is amazing.
Yeah, Erin, that's Erin. Erin is so good. Yeah, I feel like her editing in itself, the timing of it and the details of it, like that makes me laugh just as much as like what everyone's doing in it. Yeah, she's got a great style. Yeah,
really she does. Good. Yeah, it's brilliant. I said that to her actually. Her editing is amazing. I complimented her editing, as well as the rest of her. But yeah, it's just sometimes jump cuts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, it's making me miss it. We're just organised one day a month where I just turn up in a funny costume and have fun at her house. I want to do it again.
Yeah. Hopefully the vaccine's on its way. Yeah. Be all okay. So listen, you were recommended by Erin, so I'd like to ask you now if you can think of another act that you recommend that makes you laugh and that perhaps we haven't heard of.
Yes, I want to recommend Katie Pritchard.
Katie's been on actually.
Oh, she's been on.
But
can I recommend Julia Massley?
Oh yeah, Julia Massley. Yeah. Okay. Tell me a bit about her.
She's also clowny physical comedy. Yeah. Very funny. Can just slay you with a look.
Brilliant.
So yeah, big fan of her.
Brilliant. Sounds great. Well, I can't wait to talk. I'd love to see that show, by the way, the one you did in Edinburgh.
Come along and think new things about contraception.
No, I just love the idea of just breaking out of the kind of standard comedy kind of performance, and just trying new things. And you're trying lots of new things.
Yeah. I keep accidentally trying things which I've never tried before and don't know how to do. I'll quickly mention the next show I'm meant to be doing, which is called Boris Trumpson, and it's like a look at a leadership figure who's after power for power's sake, rather than principles. And I'm all about my transposition, so I've put that one into the world of an orchestra, but the audience of the orchestra. So that's my next step of trying new things. So the audience themselves, I'm like interacting with them the whole time, being the conductor with the audience and like messing up the orchestra. So
the audience that are watching the show are
actually like cast as the orchestra themselves.
As the orchestra.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's going to be your next Edinburgh show?
Yeah. So had that, had first showing in March, and then it was meant to be this Edinburgh, but we'll be back next Edinburgh. With updated jokes now that everything's changed.
I know, yeah. I suppose you've got to refer to COVID at some point. Like everybody will be, but still. But look, it's been brilliant talking to you. And I definitely want to see that show. I will be there.
We'll all be together in a real life place, hopefully next year.
Yes, absolutely. Nice talking to you, Claire. Okay, talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks, bye.